This is a video I've been wanting to make for a while, and it's on the topic of you hear a lot of these, and even the newer NBA players. You hear some of the older NBA players say it, especially the media. Everybody in the media says it, but it's not necessarily true. When you hear the comment, today's players are so much more skilled than or the older generations. Yeah and no. Two things can be true. They play a different brand of basketball. Is what people should say instead of they're more skilled. You have a lot more shooters, yeah, but a lot of players don't and can't play defense. A lot of players have poor basketball IQ. They don't like you have. I watch plenty of these games, and the floor spacing is so crazy. But you'll have players get past the first defender, the entire mid range area by the free throw line is wide open and they refuse to take it. They either keep driving to the basket or kick it out for a 3 pointer. That's one. Two, you have like five, maybe six players that can play with their back to the basket. Three of them are all European players. One of them is Kawhi, kinda sorta. You got LeBron James. KD kind of plays with his back to the basket, but not really. He faces up more really because he really doesn't have any weight to him. That's one thing he should have did in his career is get in the weight room, and he never did it. That's another video for another day. But a lot of players face up, and nobody has a back to the basket game. Embiid kind of has a back to the basket game, but he doesn't use it. He faces up. As big as he is, he should play in the paint with his back to the basket. Now, two players I give total credit to: Jokic and Luka. Both of them are incredible with their back to the basket. They their post game is crazy, especially Jokic with the fakes, the up and unders. His back to the basket game is crazy. But nobody other than the handful of players actually plays that way. Everybody faces up. Everybody wants to face up, hezzy, dribble, crossover, do all the mixtape type play, or mixtape type plays and highlight type plays. Two, three. The biggest reason I say players are not more skilled today, it gets so irritating. Even when you watch these Instagram videos and these like social media basketball players, like Hezzy the God and Devi, Desi or Devin in the lab, him, players like that. And I even as a Steph fan, watching CP3 on the Golden State Warriors, even as like even when I watch players like Paul George, when I watch players like John Morant, players that they say now have incredible handles, which I don't agree that Steph is one of the best ball handlers ever. I don't think he's top five ever, in my opinion. Because so many players in this generation get away with carrying, they get away with traveling. Every single play you watch, players get away with dragging a pivot foot, moving their pivot foot, carrying the ball with that hang dribble everybody uses. That's a carry. I don't care how you explain it. I don't care how you try to name it or go by the rule book. It's a carry. The double step back, it's always been a carry. It's gonna continue. It's always been a travel. It's gonna continue to be a travel. You don't get an extra step on a step back. I don't know why they let James Harden get away with it to begin with. And when you see players inbound, most of the time the player that's getting the ball from the inbound, they walk the ball up court with three steps. I see Steph do it. I see LeBron do it. I see Westbrook do it. The majority of point guards and the majority of shooting guards that take the ball up court, they take three steps before they even dribble the ball. And the refs never call it. LeBron travels and he gets away with offensive fouls every time he goes to the rim. And he carries a lot. Giannis carries the ball damn near every time he goes into the post. And when you sit there and watch it, if you're watching it from a basketball pure standpoint, it gets kind of aggravating to watch it And then you have people saying, "Oh, they got crazy handle. Oh, that's a nice play." Like, bro, he walked or traveled before he even got to that play. That's why you can't say players of old, like even when you got like Mad Dog Russo, when he talks like Bob Cousy, when he talks about older players like that, you talk about players like Isaiah Thomas, Rod Strickland, like Tim Hardaway, like the older players like the 90s, 70s, 80s, 60s. Players couldn't get away with traveling and carrying like that because the referees had more strict rules. It wasn't until like Allen Iverson and Steve Francis came into the league and they bent the rules a little bit so it can make the game more appealing and more entertaining because they slowed the game down when they kept calling carrying on Allen Iverson. So when you had that N1 and street ball type of basketball, they bent the rules so much that now it's kind of ugly to watch, especially when you watch players like John Morant that take that that hezzy dribble and that hang dribble into a hole and they hold the ball for like a split second, switch their feet up and take another dribble. Like, bro, that's a carry. And it's an advantage to the offensive player because how you supposed to guard that? You don't know if they about to shoot. You don't know if they about to drive past you, pick the ball. It's like, bro, it's a carry to begin with. You give them like an extra step on that. But yeah, that's why I don't get what the whole players are so much more talented today. And players couldn't do shooting wise that they could back in like the 90s and 80s, especially the 80s, because the 3 point line was seen as like a novelty shot. Like Skip Bayless often says, he's kind of right because it didn't get introduced into the NBA until the 79 season. I think it was like when Bird and Magic came to the league, maybe before that. Should do some research on it, but it was in the ABA first. Then they brought it to the NBA, and players didn't start shooting like 20 plus threes a game until like 10, 15 years ago. Teams used to shoot like maybe maybe 10 3 pointers a game back in the 90s. Maybe they will crack 10 3 pointers a game in the early 90s. So the shooting is what spaces the floor out and what allows all these players to operate in such a one-on-one fashion. You couldn't do that back in the 80s and 90s. The spacing was horrible. Couldn't nobody get to the paint, and players wasn't shooting threes, so the floor wasn't spaced like it was. You wouldn't have players like Trey Young and Steph Curry going through the paint like that, and reckless abandon like Darius Garland. These small players is jumping in there without fear getting knocked on the floor and bouncing their head off the floor. Now they beat their man. It's like a runway to the rim. Maybe you have a big man at the rim because most of the fives now stand out by the 3 point line or they fours and they masquerading as fives. But yeah, that's my point on that.